This is going to be entitled Baptists in Other Countries. So we see a little bit about what went on in Onken's life. And so I want to take a look. I'm always curious, well, what's going on in all the other countries? I know that France, let's just say in Spain, are very Catholic. Was anything happening? Is there any record of Baptists and missions around this same time in the other countries? So I found an essay written by a historian who wrote about the turn of at about 1900. And he gives an account of what's going on in the other European countries at this time. There's going to be one name that keeps popping up in all these different countries in the work of the Lord that's being done there, and that's the name of Johann Onken. So I'll let you see this for yourself. And so we have a series of countries here. What is going on in those countries? And I hope that when we look at this, that all of us might ask ourselves, what can we do? What can we do? There is a lot of work to be done. I don't know what the population increase has been since Onken's day, but I know it's a huge increase. And I know what we've all heard. Oh, you can't go to such and such country. You can't go to such and such country. Here's a problem with going there. Here's a problem with going there. What if Onken had said that? This problem in Hamburg, there's no laws. I mean, they can put you in prison, and any more than 5, you got to have the government. And there's a huge long list of what can't be done. But Onken saw not the little fingers going against him, but what? The arm of the Lord. And he trusted in that. And for some things, they stayed difficult for 2-3 decades. Never was really easy. Discipling, doing baptisms at midnight, getting out across the frontier before daybreak. Is that life worth it? I mean, is that life worth it? Is it really worth that? I mean, that's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be problems. There's going to be pressures. There's going to be impossibilities, all lifelong. But something got inside of him and changed him, and God used him to change thousands of lives. So let's take a quick look here at Baptists in other countries. France, 1832, the Triennial Convention established a mission in France under the direction of, and there's this man's name, the Baptist chapel was opened in Paris by Reverend Rostand, a Frenchman who had been a resident for several years in the United States. He died the next year of cholera, and Isaac Wilmarth took his place. Before the coming of these men, there were a few earnest persons who had learned the truth from the New Testament and sought to follow its teachings. This is an interesting statement. Ignorant that any people in the world held similar views. Can you imagine being that group? They just find the New Testament and they follow it. As far as they knew, no one else believed like they did. What great faith. So a church was organized in 1835 of 6 members, and then a native pastor, Joseph Thieffry, was ordained. He labored in the north France till his death. And last sentence in that paragraph, by 1838, there were 7 churches and 142 members connected with the mission work of the Triennial Convention. Okay. Next paragraph. When the mission was begun, the opportunity was thought to be especially favorable because of the political situation. The revolution placed Louis Philippe on the throne, and that had done much to lessen the hold of Catholics on the French people. It was believed, but not for long. Soon, he turned out to be, the essay says here, thoroughly priest-ridden. So the Baptists continued to face great persecution. A couple lines down. Every preacher or colporteur, book distributor, Bible distributor, was liable to arrest, punishment by fine or imprisonment. They made laws. It's illegal, penal offense for any more than 20 people to meet for religious worship without the consent of the government. They continued to meet. I like this sentence. Wealthy friends in New York paid these fines. In 1848, Louis Philippe was driven from the throne and a republic was established. The Constitution now declared religious liberty, but it was qualified. It was religious liberty for any organizations recognized by law. Maybe we should call it something other than religious liberty then, right? But toleration did become the order of the day. Next paragraph, First Church in Paris was formed. The first church formed in Paris was scattered during this persecution. Okay. We'll go down about near the end of that paragraph. There's a name in there that you might enjoy studying if you choose to write a paper about Baptists in France. You want to make note of the name Reverend Reuben Salins. Reverend Reuben Salins, evangelistic pastor, labored in many parts of the country of France. Lord used his work for sure. Theological school in Paris in 1879, and some French Baptist ministers, graduates of that school. Okay. I can't help but read this without recognizing the progression of the Triennial Baptist Convention to the Northern Baptist Convention and to the American Baptist Convention, which is as thoroughly liberal today as just about any of the mainline denominations that you would find. If you want to find theological liberalism in practice, take a look at the American Baptist Convention. Nonetheless, we see its foundation so often, the early years of these institutions is where the Lord really used their work. It's a warning for all of us. The church at Ephesus lost their first love in Revelation chapter 2, correct? It was about 40 years old at that time. Church at Ephesus, if you look at the life of Paul and figure up about the time that it was founded, and then you look at the date of the writing of Revelation as being about AD 90, you'll find it's about 40 years. And that church at Ephesus lost its way. And it had an opportunity to get back on track, but it also had consequences if it didn't. The candlestick, which represents the Lord's presence in their church, would be removed. They might keep going. They might have some buildings. They might still gather together, but they would no longer be the Lord's candlestick. They'd never be an institution where the Lord chose to dwell with his special presence. So it's a warning what years will do. Then Germany. The name Baptist has been an epithet of scorn and contempt in Germany for centuries. Third line down there, halfway through. For a man to profess himself a Baptist in that country is therefore to suggest that he's likely to believe in propagating the kingdom of Christ by the sword, or communism, or polygamy. That goes all the way back to the days of the Reformation that we talked about, when Baptists, Anabaptists were looked at under the guise of those radicals that did those revolutions in the city of Munster and other places. So then you turn the page over to page 2. We have that entire page dealing with one Johann Onken, who we just dealt with. And his work in Germany is summarized there for you. I would note at the second from the last paragraph on page 2, there, the first sentence of the second paragraph on second from the last paragraph on page 2, that the Triennial Convention, first sentence, employed Mr. Onken as a missionary. So he was receiving support from the Triennial Convention in America for his missions work. Page 3, there about 2/3 of the way down that first paragraph, there's a sentence that begins with the word these. These are not all in Germany proper. The German Baptists have been mindful of the Great Commission. The German Baptists were mindful of the Great Commission. German Baptists sent out missionaries to Denmark, Finland, Poland, Holland, Switzerland, Russia, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Africa. That's amazing. German Baptist missionaries to those countries. Amazing. Sweden, middle of page 3. This is a long section on Sweden. The Baptists of Sweden, in a sense, owe their origin to American Baptists, yet no American Baptist has been directly concerned in the work, and then we talk about that a little while. But right in the middle of that first paragraph on Sweden, whose name do you see? Right after August 1847, Mr. Onken. How about the second paragraph, third line in? Mr. Onken, and being led to the study of the New Testament. So Sweden, affected by this determined disciple-making pastor. Third paragraph. In 1861, Captain Schroeder returned to Sweden, and after that bought a lot and built at his own expense a house of worship for the Baptist church at Gothenburg, the first edifice of any kind in the country. First building built to house a Baptist church. Here's the sentence. Baptists had been accused of doing their works in holes and corners. So Captain Schroeder had a large signboard put along the front of the house with the legend or the phrase, Baptist Meeting Hall. And then the pastor there, and the pressure and the fines given to them. Look at the last paragraph, page 3. In other places, though, Baptists were less fortunate. Fines and imprisonment. Look at the next line. Babes were forcibly taken from their parents and baptized in Lutheran churches. This is a price these people are paying for what they're doing. Very interesting reading, just for the sake of time. Look at the second paragraph, page 4. There are 4 lines down in the middle. In 1867, they began to preach the truth in Norway, where a church was organized. Progress has been slow compared with Sweden, but the century closed with 32 Baptist churches in that country. A mission in Finland was begun in 1868, of which 31 churches and 2,030 members greeted the 20th century. Then down in Denmark, page 4. The Baptist cause in Denmark is the result not of anything done by American Baptists, but of the missionary enthusiasm of the German brethren. Look at the next sentence. And whose name do you see again? Mr. Onken. A couple lines down, Mr. Onken. King Christian V, halfway down that paragraph, established a law that in the last words of that law had to do with Luther's minor catechism having to be adhered to, which states infant baptism. Page 5. Imprisonment of the Danish Baptists. And last sentence there, next to last sentence on that paragraph with in regard to Denmark, because of their work in the Congo and their connection with the Congo, they sent missionaries there to the Congo. Russia. One of the most interesting of the German Baptist missions was the German Baptists sending missionaries to Russia. And, of course, Mennonites were there. And there were also Stundists. I put a little number 1 there, and at the back of your paper it defines what the Stundists believed in practices. But Russia there, about halfway through that first paragraph, not halfway through, about 8 lines down, there's like a 5-line quote that talks somewhat of religious liberty in Russia at this time. Now, this is pre-1917, all right? We all understand that. We know what happened in Russia after that. But about halfway through that first paragraph, part of the law was nobody must persuade an Orthodox Russian to join another church. He who does so is guilty of high crime and misdemeanor, forfeits all his legal and civil rights, and is punishable by banishment to Siberia. And at that time, early 1900s, thousands of Baptist brethren are said to have suffered this penalty. In some cases, whole churches and their pastors deported to Siberia for trying to persuade a Russian Orthodox person to believe in the Lord and be saved. Now, is that worth that price? I mean, we read that and we're like, oh, they went to Siberia. But think about the days in Siberia. Think about the weeks, the months, the years. When that happened, guardians will be appointed for his children. Someone would administer his estate. His obstinate refusal to return makes these penalties permanent. Despite that, the Baptist cause continued to prosper in Russia. Spain, at this time, they were hoping for a better future than what had happened in the past in Spain. In Italy, record of what's happened there. Conclusion. Last sentence of the first paragraph. It is inevitable that such people should look with coldness upon foreigners who come to teach them not a different religion, but what they have been bred to consider a heretical form of their own. This is the idea of the difficulty of a foreigner coming into these proud countries and preaching. What do you think, Manuel? You think people in Switzerland would love to hear and sit under the great wisdom of the American that comes to preach as Baptist? Would there be a little bit of a barrier to get through the fact that this American is coming to our country and preaching something different? Very much so. It has to be. I was so excited. There was a missionary family that was in Switzerland. This is probably about 15 years ago. And they were there because the wife was a Swiss citizen. And this man had married her, and so he got to go back as a missionary. That connection helped him. And talk about some discouraged prayer letters that came back from them. Very discouraged. And they're not missionaries there anymore. But how can we, is the Lord done? Is the Lord done with all these countries? Is he done? Talk to Mr. Ramus. He goes to chapels all the time and asks the young people, anybody interested in full-time Christian service? And ask him how many hands go up. I don't know that the Lord's done there, but we need people, all of us, to ask ourselves, what are we doing in this life? What's our purpose? What is our purpose? Lord, will you please let me make a difference? Will you call me? Will you show me? Will you direct me? Can I set aside some of the comforts? Can I set aside all the comforts in order to take your gospel to where you want to? I see this. Ankin's life inspires me, but also leaves me with that, what about now? What about now feeling? Hear about Switzerland, I hear about Germany, and there's some missionaries out there. There's some. Know of one good missionary in Prague. Prague's a big place. Big place. And they're working at it. They'd love more workers. So would Switzerland. Germany. Can we do it? Well, here's all the reasons why we can't. But that's the little finger, right? The Lord's strong arm. If we know him, the Lord's strong arm. Maybe one of you. Maybe one of you. Lord, I pray you challenge us, every Baptist a missionary. Stir our hearts with these accounts in Jesus' name. Amen.